My name's Jeff Fried.
I'm Alain from Benelux.
And this is a session about multi-model development. Especially with this size audience, we'd love your help, right? You guys are all experienced with cache development. Who has already done things with, globals and SQL and objects? Right. Great.
Shouldn't held the session, they all know it.
Right. So the reason that we held this session is twofold. The first is that there's some, I'll say, tips and tricks that we don't think people know generally.
I hope so.
And you can tell us afterwards if that's true or false. And we decided to focus on ObjectScript for this because that's the folks that were here. But everything we're talking about shortly, you'll be able to do in client-side languages as well, such as Java and C#. The second is that we observed that many of our customers were having a harder time explaining to their management what was special about cache and what's special about IRIS. Does anybody have that challenge? A little bit? Okay. And one of the things that we do that we think is special is this notion of multi-model. So what we prepared was pretty high-level stuff that I'll go through quite quickly about industry trends, what's multi-model, and why do you care? And the feedback that we'd like is this useful for you in your organizations? And is this something that you already, is this obvious, or is this something that, because you live it, or something that is, that helps you, both from a mentality and from a management standpoint? Then we'll get into hands-on stuff, and then we'll show, briefly a couple of folks. There's a whole developer community in which there's several really cool examples of different models, all using cache or InterSystems IRIS. And everything we're talking about applies to cache and InterSystems IRIS, although of course our focus going forward is on IRIS. So you have a chance to leave now if this isn't what you wanted. And let me get in quickly to a perspective on multi-model development. And I'll say I've been with InterSystems for 8 months, but my background is in theoretical computer science, in data structures, algorithms, distributed systems. So I still have a tiny bit of that academic in me. And the perspective, obviously, is that there's lots of data models. In the last decade, since the rise of NoSQL, this is very clear and very obvious to people, as opposed to probably 10, 15 years ago when the notion was everything was SQL. And that in almost any application that's important or that matters, you need multiple data models. If you take, this is a classic thing out of the O'Reilly book on database architecture and multi-model modeling. Parts and the containment of parts within subsystems in an aircraft, in this case, lend themselves very well to a graph model because there are different attributes for each kind of part, and therefore doesn't fit as well in a straight relational table as you might like. The maintenance intervals, time series, and you get the idea. So in most applications, whether you're doing this explicitly or implicitly, you as a developer are mapping and creating data models that fit the problem. Who's heard of polyglot persistence? Okay, this is a term that if you go through a database architecture class now, or you read the mags, that you see this, it's been sort of around for a dozen years, and it's very similar to polyglot programming in terms of working with multiple languages. The basic idea is use the right model for the right job, but use a different data store that's specialized for each model, and then stitch them together. And most systems that I've seen in the industry are done this way. Multi-model, by contrast, is use the model that's appropriate for the job, but put it in a common data store. And this is, probably an obvious idea. From a terminology standpoint, it's probably been out 5, 6 years. So both of these as jargon date to the rise of NoSQL. But of course, the concept is, almost as old as software. And the multi-model concept is that you should be able to work in a single storage fabric across different models fluidly. Now, the position of InterSystems in this space is pretty good. We have a heritage as a premier object-oriented database. And even if you look at, this is an academic conference, EDBT, that last year did a whole classification and ontology of multi-model databases, in which the observation is that the heritage of a database determines a lot of its performance characteristics on different models. The maxim that software architecture tends to resemble the organizational structure that built it. So, when I worked at Microsoft, it was a running joke because the way that the Microsoft software was built was in the interest of how the teams were organized, and integration was poor when there was poor politics. It had nothing to do with actual software architecture. There's a similar thing here in terms of the way that different databases work. And this doesn't have it does have a pointer. It's interesting here in terms of dating Cache as a multi-model database to 2016. For the old timers at InterSystems, I've seen Snickers for that, but it's actually got a lot of recognition as a flexible data model for that. So if you're in the position of trying to explain Cache in the modern landscape to management, this might be useful. So why do you care about this? Well, some of this is pretty obvious, right? It's fewer moving parts is better. But I took a classic e-commerce application, and actually this is not my work. I'm ripping off an example and extending it for InterSystems. The parts within the application lend themselves to different data models, and a sort of classic implementation actually has 5 data stores. So the notion of using polyglot with 5 different things versus using one data store from InterSystems is the basic comparison. One thing I do want to say is, in this discussion, don't confuse architectural layers from common data store. And I'll come back to this multiple times. So I'll quickly go through A/B comparisons. Obviously, if you have multiple systems, it's more complex than a single system. If you have high availability, in this case, I went through the HA approach for each of these 5 data structures, and they're all different. If you're using Redis, you're dealing with Apache Zookeeper. But Elastic has a different HA setup. So you have 5 different subsystems, each of which have a different HA architecture, which is even more complex. They all scale independently. So you're taking something that is basically, okay, one thing is better than more moving parts, and it compounds as you get into HA, and it also compounds as you get into system architecture for what's a minimum element. From a synchronization standpoint, the advantage of having multiple modules architecturally, right, decomposition is a good thing. But if decomposition means you have multiple data stores for different parts, then you start needing to synchronize the data, and you start needing to replicate the data. So that adds complexity. And again, we're not the only folks in the industry that are making these observations. It's starting to become a common trend and actually a term now to say multi-model database in a way that it wasn't even 2-3 years ago. At my last company, we were involved in a lot of projects that were large-scale data store and search, and I saw this all the time, that the synchronization between multiple data stores used ETL techniques, which were batch-oriented and slow, and therefore the overall system had no real-time capability. And then obviously, in terms of the economics, there's two parts. One is licensing, one is skill set. If you're not familiar with it, we have a great case study on our website in which the comparison of the cost of ownership between InterSystems IRIS and multiple elements is laid out. Since the cost of most projects is dominated by people, not license cost, not electricity or cooling cost, it's about how quickly you can create an application, how easily you can maintain it, et cetera. That's the thing to really keep your eye on. From a performance standpoint, one observation that I've seen a lot of debates about this I spoke at the Data Summit in Boston this spring, and this was like a big breakout and practically a fistfights about this concept of whether a specialized database was going to be faster for that data structure or not. And I will say, this is a sort of even element. When you get bigger, the observation and the theory is that you cache things once. So if you have something that's multi-model, you have something that's multiple copies in different data stores, you might have a performance advantage at the metal, but you'll have a disadvantage at the application level because you don't benefit from caching that data and reusing it in multiple models. So this is just a basic side-by-side comparison based upon that hotel booking application. Quick show of hands of whether you think this is a useful thing to explain to other people or not. Yes, useful? No, you bored me, show me code. Okay. So the basic principle here, obviously, is fewer moving parts is better. And as a trend, this is a Gartner report where the way you read this is as like a clock. If you're starting at midnight, then at the beginning, there are new things which are distinctive and maybe sole source. The era of choice is such that there's multiple vendors that are taking that concept and offering it. Then you get into something that's commoditized, then you get into something which is passé, if you will. And you'll see that multi-model is right here and also is on the fastest track. So I expect that from the standpoint of industry trends, we'll see more and more of this term for a very common sense idea. In two main scenarios. One is you have a team of people that look at things differently. There's a trend, if you have used personas, and they're different developer personas, there's a trend now to having a persona for a team, because most teams, software development teams, have specialist roles. So you have one woman who's a killer database architect who works in SQL, and somebody else that works with objects and Hibernate with Java, and somebody else that works in object script close to the metal and close to the data, all on the same team. Who works in that kind of environment? Here, and you guys have a makeup that's all that's more on the right, where everybody is using the same tools and language. I'm picking on Stuart. Yeah. Okay. So I think for the picture on the left, the value of having common data that you can use in different ways and have it be the same data is pretty obvious. You write software as a object script developer, and then you can hand it off to your colleagues that do BI and they're working in SQL. What we decided to do is focus on the second case, where you're a developer and why would you mix models? And now I will pass it on to someone that lives this in terms of a hands-on scenario.
So when Jeff came to me and said, can you do a demo? I didn't think. I was tired. And I said, yes, why not? He said, about multi-model. Okay, why not? I worked with everything. So I thought, okay, I will do something for SQL, I will do something for objects, I will do something for globals, key value, can even do something for documents. And said, what the hell? I'm just proving that it's in the product. What's the added value? I said, okay, let's think about an application that uses everything at the same time, and also show you a reason why we use it at the same time. And I'm lucky at the same time and unlucky at the same time. I have a big customer who's quite demanding, and they were creating a model, a role-based access control. Who has experience with role-based access control systems or try to create one? Okay. So you have users, you have roles, you have sessions, operation, permission, objects, all that kind of stuff. I said, okay, I will do that. Before we start, I want to do one small calculation. Oops. And now it's time to break everything. Can you read this? So this is for the Belgian Federal Police. This is in production, but I will not show you the model, because if I show you the model and the data, I have to kill you. It's fair enough?
If you actually want to see it, stay after and call your relatives now.
Yeah. So they came with a design, and we did a calculation. 40,000 users. Okay. They have something like 220 units, but not everybody is work. You can look at it as a province. So I said, let's take an average, 20 units. They have 100 applications. I said, take an average, 20. How many roles do you have? Oh, an average of 10. I said, okay, take 5. How many permissions do you have? 5. Oh, by the way, we have 6 environments. These were the number of records that I had to store in a table. How many zeros are there? Too many. And then they say to me, will this perform? I know that Cache and Iris is very fast, but this is dangerous, because this is a service that we are generating and creating. They will access that data primarily through a REST call. And every time they do something in an application, there will be a REST call. Yeah, 40,000 users hitting my systems. So I could have done 2 things. Let them do it, or do the stupid thing as I did. Let's try to help them. So I'm a stupid guy. So I came up with another calculation. I said, oh, let's go for, I can't kill users, too bad. Can't kill the units, can't kill the applications. I can kill the environment. I split it up. I'll tell you later on. And it came something with this. This is only 16 million records. This is better, much better. So, what did I use? I couldn't throw away their whole design, so I took some of there. And I was prepared. I told you, I have Eclipse here. Somebody wanted to see if I was using Eclipse. Yes, I am. But I will not show the studio or the Eclipse. Let's go straight to the design. So, for the environment, okay, and I forget something else. So it had to be fast. It had to be through REST calls. But on the other hand, they said, we want to have easy maintenance. We want to see if a user is there. We want to run an SQL, and we want to see he can do this, this, this for this, with his roles and some, okay. I said, why? Go in the globals, read it. No, didn't want it. So, two constraints that I have. That was killing me. So, let's go. Let's have a look. Yeah. This is not real data. I can show you real data, but again, Andreas, you know, if I show you, you know what happens. So I have some environments in there. Dev test, should make it a little bit bigger because this is unreadable almost. This is simple. I have some users in there. Let's show you the users. And everything is accessed by what they call a matricule, unique number. That's the number of a policeman in Belgium. Everyone has a unique number. Okay. Still, this is not spectacular. It's purely SQL. Let's do this away. Then we have some units in there. Well, we have Brussels, Antwerp, all strange cities. There's only one beautiful city in Belgium, that's Bruges. That's where I live. Anybody see the movie? Okay, I will not tell it because it's recorded. Can't tell the title. So, still SQL. I created a table with permissions, and they will never take away a permission, only add permission. So I have, this is also pure SQL. Quite simple. And I have roles. Okay. But on each role, there are linked different permissions. So here, I already had something that I could get rid of those gigantic number of rows in my table. So what I did, I created within my, maybe I should open Eclipse, show you. I'll go to Eclipse. Let's go to Eclipse. If I find it, it's in roles. I added the property permissions as an array of permissions. I use the fact that I can use collections in an object. Okay. Everybody's familiar with that? This is nothing new? Old stuff? Okay. The advantage of this is that I can query it. It's projected to SQL as this. This is not what you like to see. Let's see. Bunch of numbers and stuff. To make it more readable, go in here. You see, cheat sheet. Because I can't type, it will fail. I know that. Control-V. And execute it. And I have it in a more readable form. I have admin. So I'm still there for my performance, and I'm still there for my SQL. Nothing to worry about yet. Now the heart of my application is not using objects in this case, not using SQL in this case, combining it, but using key value, or as we know it, globals. So let's have a look at the internal of the global. This is how a global looks like. I can make it a little bit bigger for you, Francois, but not more. Yeah. So this is a stripped down design, but what you have, I have entries in here: environment, user, unit, bit string of roles. My roles don't exceed 64,000. I only have one entry. So I have a bit string of roles, and once I have the role, I have the permissions. That's like that. So the access, the quick access is, they come in, they give me environment, user, unit. Straight on, this is global access, I go to the bit string and say, what's on that position? What do I have? I have straight on this. This is just access, very, very fast. I'm satisfying one condition, fast retrieval. The only problem is SQL. How will I bring this up in my reporting? Okay. There's also an easy answer to that. Let me show you first the result. No, let's go to the code. Where is it? It's called logic. Wow. I've created the query. This is the old stuff. There are different ways of doing that. There's where an example in the code. I created query roles with some parameters. And there are three methods in there. There's an execute in there, there's a close in there, there's a fetch in there. What you basically do is you go through your globals. And you expose them as SQL. The cool thing is, once you define your query as a SQL query, as a stored procedure, it acts as something that we call a tabled valued function. Has anybody used the tabled value function? Yes? No? Yes? No? It acts like a view. It's the same thing. It's read-only, but you can use parameters on top of it. Let me show you what comes out of it. Let's go back in here. And this is only for the SQL stuff, of course. Cheat sheet. Yep. Where are we? Here. Let's first take this. So I'm doing this. Execute. And I receive in here, through this table, I receive my, I can't scroll more. I receive my environment. I know it's on the bottom. I have my user number. These are the parameters that I provide. I have my unit. And I get my roles with my permission ID and my permission. I have a table view in there. This is just asking for one unit if I leave that out. So I have something like 550 rows being returned. If I leave that out, let's see what happens. Execute. Okay, I have a lot more. He's doing it now for all the units that the user is known in. So you have different styles. So I'm using 3 models and I start combining them. And depending what you want or what the application needs, you use the different access. You can mix them. Now the nice thing is, here it stops at the cache level. In IRIS we can go a little step further. I should have put the 5th model in there, but because we have also a search, a full text search in there. It's not mentioned in here, but we have a full text search. It does the same as Elastic, only on data internally, not on external sources, but we have a full text search in here. So what I did, I created documents. I created documents that give more information about the permissions, the documentation about the permissions. Why? Through a document model, schemaless, and I can add different versions of that without any problem and tie it to that. The good thing is, I can query my document store. We'll first show you that. Let me make this a little bit smaller so that at least I can, let me make this smaller. Come on. Now I can go bigger. So I'm querying my documents, and I get my JSON style document as a whole. I have my document ID, last modified, and I have in here something where I'm looking at the background and some general info. So more information about that, so tying it all together. And as my storage, which is key value, and my users who are SQL and objects, and my document store is SQL enabled, I can do stuff like this. Go back in here, join those two tables together, and get a general view. I have to make it a little bit smaller. General view, it returns for a certain user, for a certain environment, for a unit. It returns me, okay, I found this role admin, providers of just-in-time big data voice-enabled media for customers, comes with general management. This is already my document info that I have. Need to focus on this entry, then I have another one. And, okay, I have something else here. Here spreading the next generation, blah, 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 following up on entertainment industry. This is quite in the news. Fake news. I wanted to make that remark. We have the same thing in Europe. So, are there any questions about it? You can mix your models. You use the model for what you need. In certain cases where you need very high speed, use another model, and the interfaces to get to the model, they're coming in with REST. I can do whatever I want. Checking if they have access, very fast. If they want to have reporting, I have SQL. If they want to modify or add something, or to REST, or to JSON object script, or to Java, I don't care at that moment. I have my multi-model on one place. If this becomes slow, it's easy for me. I can scale. I can put ECP servers underneath of it, like an ECP server for every province. Why? The data that I'm using, the users mostly connect to one province. So I can scale out, because all my data will be scaled. My data will be in cache, in memory. Okay. I think we should return back to the rest of the PowerPoint, Jeff. Do you have any questions, or do you say this is bullshit? Okay, let's go back. We'll start the presentation again.
For the people that have used table dotting functions, just a quick question. How did you use them? I'll pick on you. Oh, somebody raised their hand and said that they had. All right. So at least everyone has learned at least one tip. Just to finish very quickly. Yeah.
Yes?
So you just said, we are still not using InterSystems. We will be using.
Well, I can repeat the question, but if you can.
Sure. Yeah. So what I'm trying to understand is, so you do have multi-domain data model that can be exposed through a SQL call, right? So. And I saw what you had was a JSON-style document coming with other relational documents. My question is, when I'm doing a SQL or I'm doing something else, can I also query the JSON key value pair and link it to other relational fields? For example, I don't want to see the entire JSON. I want that particular JSON document where the key value, where the value for a particular key is something, right?
Yes.
So can I do in a single SQL or somewhere like that, or I have to do multiple SQLs in that case?
Now, the question is, can he really limit to see in that whole query only one document or the different versions of a document based on a property in there with a certain value? Yes, you can. First of all, if the property is separated, you can query on that property. You can do a where clause on the property. The easiest part of doing that, if I would do it, is on my document itself, the whole JSON structure, we have a full text search in there. And it's easy to say where property, well, easy. And it's the same in the same SQL instruction. Okay, you're welcome.
So I wanted to make one other point, which is that all of these techniques, we're showing things in object script because we expected everybody here would be familiar with it, but it's also externalized in other languages, in Java, in C#, soon in Python and Node. Just very quickly, who is not familiar with the developer community? Okay, who has contributed to the developer community? And who has not contributed to the developer community?
Francois, you haven't raised your hand.
All right, so please do. This is doing very well. It's vibrant, and I'm pointing out a few elements that relate to, I won't dig into them directly, but document database as a IRIS capability and how to use it. You'll get the link right there. There's several GraphDB, graphs are one of my favorite structures here. The GraphDB pattern is a reference pattern that you can use directly in your code. The Ontadia is an ontology-based view where you can materialize views that are based upon a separate typed link structure, like an ontology, which is extremely powerful if you're like doing natural language processing, as we also have built into IRIS. You find you're using this kind of structures a lot. There's a gentleman, actually a group that has taken this to hyperbole. Who knows what a semiotic hypergraph is? I don't think actually anyone knows what a semiotic hypergraph is, but so it's kind of obscure language. But this is not just a graph with typed links, but the types themselves refer to a separate ontology. So you can say, I have a data structure where it's extremely flexible, and this happens in linked data, for example. There's a lot of publicly available data, especially textual data, that's cross-linked according to the OWL standard. And this takes it one level further, where the links themselves and the types of the links can refer back to a ontology. All built onto cache. Really, a really impressive application, and also code you can use. And last but not least, there's a portable key value and object store called QEWD that has built and supports IRIS today. So if you find yourself in the situation where you want to pick up code samples that use object, relational, document, I'd refer you to that. If you have more examples, we're really interested in how you guys as customers have been using the native capabilities for, for multi-model, and how it's helped you and how we can make them better. Because we see this as a big wave coming in the industry. And that's it. Thank you very much.